Okay, everyone. So now that we have some experience getting a little bit more data into our visualization, how we can actually use data that we found and format it efficiently for use in our visualizations, we're going to look at how we can actually do some more detailed customizations of these. And so that means dealing with documentation. Now, the question of how we get to documentation is sort of part of the challenge there. So what I have done here is I have said I've Googled for Google Charts customization. Fortunately, Googling for Google products is usually relatively effective. And I've chosen this one. I've actually going to go down and choose bar charts because that is the type of chart that I'm using. So even though we have that thing where we can sort of very quickly change between, say, a bar chart and a pie chart, right? The one that I have chosen to implement here is a bar chart. So when I want to look to customize it, although there's a lot of similarities, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the customization options for the specific kind of chart that I'm using. So in that case, that's going to be, in my case right now, it's going to be a bar chart. And what they have here is they have kind of a whole bunch of examples of things that I can do to customize this bar chart. We're going to look at two things right now in particular, which is labeling. And then because this came up for one of your classmates, for one of the folks in class, how we can deal with things like where the starting point is, because of course it turns out that Google visualizations will make bad decisions for us. So one that I want to highlight in particular is, I'll point out that we can do things like color and opacity and fill color and stroke color, opacity and stroke width, right? All of these things which can be helpful for doing things like indicating uncertainty. So we've talked about having a lighter color will suggest that something is not quite determined yet, right? So something that's a future projection. Another example would be that is probably a little bit more common, or definitely more common, is things like how do we do labels, right? So we want to be able to label things directly sometimes. We might want to put, for example, if you have a bar chart, you might want to put you might want to label the bars with the specific value to make it clear. A bunch of you did this in your paper visualizations. So what we're going to look at now is how we can add these labels. Now, I will point out that the way that they're constructing their data here is not exactly the same way that we did it in our that we've done it in our examples up till now. So they're using a something called array to data table. We could do this. So I could either modify my code so that instead of specifically saying add column, add rows, I could actually just modify my data so that the first item in my data set was actually those labels, right? And then I would need to change the function that I was using from, I would need to change the function that I was using from new data, Google visualization data table to array to data table and pass it my array right there. So that's definitely an option going forward. It's really up to you all what you find the most convenient and kind of sensible. I'm going to continue with our example here just for the sake of consistency. And so the question, though, of how to actually express this when I'm using the add column syntax is not entirely obvious. So once again, because they've shown how to do it here, I was like, I'm not sure how to do that. So when I'm using the add column functionality. So again, I Googled it. So I said add column role with add column visualizations, right? So I kind of put in what I thought were the keywords, which is that I'm using the add column function. Column role is how they describe this. If I look at the documentation, it says the role annotation. And so this is the search that I did. This is the link that I selected. And in column roles, if I scroll down the page here, it gives an explanation of what these roles are, what some of the options are. So I have annotation text, when they can be used. You see I can switch to a dotted line here in a line chart. I can show confidence intervals, which is not something we do often on published visualizations, but is certainly something to know about. And then they show how to add an annotation column using the add column method. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this out of this example, right? And actually, I will be a good developer here, and in addition to doing that, I am going to included myself a link of where to find the reference for this, right? To figure out where I did it, because in case I want to look up something else, right? Looked up how to add a column role at the following link. Right? Handy. Okay, so now I've added this, and of course what I have to add is actually what I want those annotations to be. And I need to do this actually in my data. So I'm doing this on my first data set so that I don't have to regenerate this whole thing. You can see now how having that Excel concatenate function, hopefully you can see now why that's so useful. Because now if I wanted to add a third column to that, I could just easily do it in Excel. And then again concatenate that out as needed. So in this case I'm just going to show favorite okay, right, I'm describing my feeling about these pizza toppings, yuck. Okay, so the reason why I have to do this is because I have now added a third column, or I've told Google that I'm going to add a third column here, right? Instead of having 2 add columns, I have 3, and I've said that the third one is going to be my annotation. So having done that, I can come back to my image, my visualization, and now you can see these are nicely inserted here. There's a lot of other things that we can do. There's an enormous number of ways to configure this. And that's of course the reason why I strongly recommend, as I will always do, that you start by planning this out with pencil and paper. So exactly the same way you all did your first visualization exercise, it's a great idea to start out by sketching what you want to do, and then you can work your way through refining the digital version of your visualization to reflect those, to reflect that design. So to take another example, let's say I wanted to do the bad thing, and I wanted to start one of my bar charts not at 0. I want to start it at 5, let's say, just for kicks. So again, I'm going to come back to my documentation here, and a lot of these configuration options are going to be contained, a lot of the options are going to be contained in this configuration options listing. And so this is going to show me everything that I can do. I can add animations to these things. I don't really recommend that, but I can. I can do enormous styling to my annotations, which is hideous, right? Why would you ever want to do this? But it demonstrates the variety of customizations that you can do to these things. So part of this is, I recommend that you all kind of scroll through these, not because you need to memorize them, but because it gives you a good sense of the sort of lingo that Google Visualization uses to describe different things. It'll help you when you come back and you want to make adjustments. So I can say bars, chart area background color. I think that's actually one that I adjusted previously. And again, you'll notice that these don't always show that. So the way that the syntax is outlined here is a combination, is again not entirely straightforward. So I'm going to go to one that seems a little more obvious, and we're going to work with that one. So for example, here on colors, I want to change the color of the bars in my visualization. So what I can do is, if I flip back here, when I see that color, okay, what I can do is just say color, and I want everything to be, what color should I choose? I could always choose this hideous electric red that I choose because it's very obvious. Okay, so I say color and I give it a color. That's a hexadecimal color, and whoops, no dice. All right, what happened there? Let's see. So let's see what I missed here. Here's my customization. Ah, sorry, because I wrote color instead of colors, right? So you notice that when I did it wrong, right, I have the wrong attribute in here. It actually doesn't break anything, which is pretty handy, right? It just ignores it. It's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm gonna skip that part. Okay, let's try it again with colors, the correct one. And whoops, not the page I'm trying to refresh. Oops, and it says, pound is not a valid color string. So I probably wasn't reading my documentation here closely enough, yes, I have to put my color in quotation marks. So again, you see that when I run into these problems, oops, no, let's check again. It does seem to think colors, okay, because even though I'm only giving it one color, the data type that it wants is a list, right? See how it has square brackets around this? So it's like, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's try this again one more time. If I just give it a single color, whether it will color all of them that color or just the first one. Again, you can see this is really a trial and error process, right? As you get experience with something, there you go. Now they're all hideous electric red. So you can see that this is very much a process of trial and error, and it does matter just spending a little bit of time with it and kind of looking through for the things, the properties that might do what you are looking to do. So if I look at x-axis, let's see, horizontal axes, series, oh gosh, there's so much here, horizontal axis, so I can say title, text title style, baseline. So here we have horizontal axis baseline. And the question is whether or not this is my horizontal or my vertical axis. Well, I'm going to say it's my it's my vertical axis. So it's going to be h-axis versus a v-axis. So I'll try with this one. Now, this demonstrates an important kind of sub-element of this, which is that when I want to modify the axes, it's actually an object, and I can tell what the properties of that internal object are by the dot. Okay, so the same way that if we want to access a property of a JSON object, when I see that dot, it means that it is a sub-property of the specified object. Whoa, that was a mouthful. So let's try an example here. For h-axis, and again, I don't actually know off the top of my head if this is correct. H-axis is itself an object, right? It takes an object. That object can have a bunch of different parameters. It can have a title, it can have a text title style. So I am going to experiment with baseline, okay? So inside this x-axis object, or this h-axis object, I'm going to put in a property called baseline, and I'm going to give it a value of 5. Okay, so first we're going to find out if I broke it. Second, we're going to find out if it actually did what I wanted it to do. So coming back here, there we go. So now you see the horizontal axis is actually starting at 5. Obviously, I would never ever want to do this because that would be a terrible thing. But for example, if you wanted to customize the horizontal, it's also interesting that it calls it the horizontal axis, right? Because it's positioned vertically here. But the only way I know whether that is what will happen is to experiment and find out. So hopefully this is giving you a sense of how you can start to really craft these visualizations into the solutions that you're looking for. And when we come back, when we come back after spring break, we're going to look at doing some of the data analysis that we need to help contextualize these things. All right, that's it for now.